Okay, so hello everybody. I think we're recording now. Have a conversation today and just explore supported decision making. We have a guest with us, Damian Stephens. I forgot your surname there, Damian, because I just call you Damian. So, Damian Stephens. I'll introduce Damian in a minute, but just a little bit about why we are focusing on supported decision making today. And through the Gr8 Support Movement, we see and hear some wonderful stuff. Every day, and as you know, 103 stories during lockdown of Gr8 support. It was just incredible what we see and hear on a regular basis. What we sometimes hear things that start to concern us a bit, and across the whole of social care, particularly when people supporting adults with learning disabilities and possibly autism, we're hearing more and more and more there's a lot of best interest decision making happening, and we're not hearing a lot about how we're really helping people explore how they can make a decision and whether they are able to make that decision. There's a sort of assumption of lack of capacity rather than a belief in the ability to make a decision if you're given the right support and opportunity to do that. So we're doing some work around that at the moment as Paradigm, and we're going to be looking at how we refresh a resource we've got and reboot human rights, as we're boldly stating, which is really important. So we wanted to bring this to the Gr8 Support Movement today because we are concerned. Even though we see the good, we are concerned, and we want to know why that's happening, if it's happening. And we want to ensure, as a starter for 10, that people who are involved in the movement just get a reconnect with the real principles of the Mental Capacity Act, and particularly supported decision making. So we invited Damian. Damian is here. Damian is down in Cornwall, works for Brandon Trust. What's your job title, Damian?
Doesn't matter. We support people that need our support.
So you tune into Damian now. He's going to give me lip all the time. Okay, so that's fine. So Damian works down in Cornwall, and I met Damian probably five or 6 years ago. And what I really like is he's slightly mouthy. He doesn't let me get away with stuff or anybody get away with it, and just really believes in the fundamental belief of all to live a good life, and how we need to explore and question anything that gets in the way of people living a good life. So that's Damian down in Cornwall, and I'm just going to start, Damian, by just asking you to tell us a little bit about supported decision making and why you think it's such an important element of the Mental Capacity Act.
Yeah, about the widest question we could start with. Thank you for that. doesn't get much wider than that.
I think half an hour.
I think for me, I think where it all begins, and I want to start really with in what you've referred to there as the Mental Capacity Act as one of the game changers for me. And I want to reflect back to what Sally said about when our first meeting together was knowing outside of the environment that I was in, the isolated environment of the provider that I work for, was nice to go out to the bigger world and see that we face the same challenges together, that there are people talking about it and we can instigate that. And then the second fundamental change for me, and probably one of the most important pieces of legislation that really connected for me, was the Mental Capacity Act. And because it starts with this big brash statement, and I think it's something that we need to sort of discuss starting from, and that is the always assume capacity. And what a great statement to make, what it does. Sat behind that is the real life version of, does that really happen? Do we start from that place? And I always question, with certainly my teams and anybody I talk about with around the Mental Capacity Act and support decision making, is do we really start from that position? Do we? And people will say, yeah, I always assume capacity. My apologies for technology there. And I think that's our starting place. Always assume capacity. It's our starting block, and everything else under the Mental Capacity Act principle sits behind that. We should always start here. Okay, so how do we begin to look at that? For me, it's really easy, and that's what I like doing with our lives is that we have this wonderful job, and we sometimes lose focus about what we do because of regulation, compliance, and everything that sits down there. Don't make it work with you and for you. That's what it's designed for. So when we start with always consume capacity, really think about that. Take a moment when you're starting on that of someone's decision, because if you sit back for a little while and watch even a really good support worker supporting someone, you watch what that initial is. How many times do we really assume, challenge is the person doesn't have capacity, because I think we do it the opposite way around. I think we go for a natural theme of, we know what this individual likes and dislikes are. I think that's our starting point, and that's okay because we can explore off there. And then where we really begin to kick into gear a little bit is those bigger decisions. That's where we really begin to use the Mental Capacity Act, the holidays, the big financial, transactions, etc. And then we produce all our evidence, and we're really good at that as within social care. I think at those big key moments, I want to strip that back to everyday life decisions and the small decisions that we have. Can we keep questioning ourselves about, are we brave enough to assume capacity? Because that's what it's about. We do have a lot of challenges and a requirement to evidence everything. And we write these beautiful support plans and it all sets up, and I follow them. And I know that Joe here likes a cup of coffee at 9 o'clock in the morning. But has Joe always wanted a cup of coffee ever since the day one of being 10 years of age? And now Joe is in probably her late 60s, etc.
30s,
there you go. But that's the starting point of the question that we have is that it begins there. And we all know, before we move on later in the discussion to talk about changing wants and needs and decisions and how that fluctuates, let's start with that real basics. Assume capacity. Sit there, think about it. The statement couldn't be bigger. And yet, for me, the challenge is getting people to think that way, Sally.
I think it really is. And we do, I think we'd all agree that there is that sense. And I never believe support workers do that intentionally. There's something about the culture, this subliminal message is out there saying we've got to keep people safe, and therefore this veering towards they can't because, rather than how can we help a person understand. So tell us, Damian, in terms of supported decision making, where it sits in the principles of the Mental Capacity Act. It's the fundamental bits. We haven't made this up, have we? It's a requirement of the law to support people to make decisions, yes?
Oh, I think it's bigger than that, Sally. It's bigger. It's human rights. It's someone's right to live, having decision makers. But where we look at it sat in the Mental Capacity Act, your assumption, as always, assume capacity. And then the second part of our Mental Capacity Act is make every effort to support that decision making. And that is vital in what we do. And I think the culture comes from not exploring that deeper, not exploring that. We've put it in almost like we do in social care. And I understand those pressures. I get it. We come into social care, we do 20,000 bits of training, and sat in the middle of that is the Mental Capacity Act. And, what have I got to know? Me 5 principles, and I know that and I can reel that off. No, it's better than that. It's a wonderful piece of legislation. And when you look at it, make every effort to support people to make decisions. That's the bit where it crumbles down for me. And I think, and certainly from a manager's perspective or from an auditing perspective, and we have to talk about this, these are realities of our job. When we go in and really look at that and talk to our teams and talk to our support staff, I'm going to try and give you a bit of a live example. So, for example, support decision making. Let's move on if we can. And I apologise for my style of conversation. I will flick left, right, and centre.
No, that's fine. I just think so what we're focusing on today is the second principle. It's absolutely the requirement to support individuals to make their own decisions. And what I think is happening, not what I think, what I know, is there's a presumption of lack of capacity, a fear of unwise decisions being made and risk, and often people jumping to best interests, which is where we start to take away the rights of people to make decisions for themselves.
I think that's a default that we do within social care, straight to best interest. The individual has a difficult way of communicating. They may find it a challenge to communicate, but that not in their world. In their world, they're communicating quite clearly to us. It's our responsibility and right to explore that, to spend time really beginning, and that's where you begin with that. And I think the supported decision making, where that begins to sort of unravel a little bit, is what tools are we providing to our teams and our support staff to get behind understanding decision making? So again, excuse me, I love the fact that Paradigm and the Gr8 Support Movement have been involved in the Don't Call Us Unskilled Workforce again, because actually there is no bigger skilled workforce, but we still must provide that support to our teams to explore that. Now, let me give you an example here. Let's use a classic right end of the scale. Someone's very non-communication through verbal, and that we know they may use movements. They may use that bracket of, I'm going to use what we class as behaviors to communicate. Absolutely right, because that's their world. That's what they're trying to do. Where have we gone above and beyond them? Where have we spent time exploring that communication? Some people call it passport, some people call it whatever it is, someone's communication. That's where we're going to start today. What tools do we have available for support staff, and what can we as support staff really begin to look at? How do I really do? I'm not a specialist in communication. I've never pretended to be. What I am supposed to be a specialist in is supporting someone that I know, that I'm building up a relationship with, that I can talk about and advocate for on their behalf. Now, what you do outside of that is, what have you got available to you to begin to explore that? Now, I've always heard the classic example and the lines of, and I've been used several times, and I've been in awe of this from a personal example of people using sounds, eye movement in a particular way. And people will say, well, that's person's communication style. I understand that. And that's okay. But then when I go as a new individual to go and look at that support planning and understand what that communication like, where has that come from? Is that a team's perspective of we got that, we know what that means? Well, okay, that's fine. On behalf of the individual, evidence that for me, please. Show me how you've begun to explore that. That is a definite yes or no. And more importantly, there is an understanding of yes or no from that. So where we start with initially with teams that really struggle with this second principle and really exploring it is beginning to say, well, what help have you got for the individual? Because the individual should actually have some support around them. There's some resources available to them. And we instantly, as a default, go to a SALT team, for example, a speech and language specialist. These are people that are trained. These are people that can help us explore that. But I'll tell you something, where it all of a sudden straight away becomes what we would call a challenge is that people will say, but the time and people's time and how do we fit that in? I've got activities to do today, and I've got to get this done. No, come back a little bit. Part of our support is to begin to really explore and get to know an individual. And part of our time, what we would class as, I suppose I would class as intensive interaction, is that heartbeat next to someone, that exploring what someone says. That is some of the most valuable type of support work we could ever do, especially for supported decision making, because if you don't know an individual and the way that they think. Now, what I'm referring to there is, I open up I'm going to call it communication passport. Sorry, that's just what I would, relevance it to. So I'd open up in a communication passport and I would say, okay, I speak to Jo today, and what Jo does for me is she's happy. She will give me a thumbs up. She will give me, an eye movement, a head movement, whatever that, if Jo was unable to communicate verbally. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking that as a given for every decision that individual's done. So I assume that Jo is giving me a thumbs up because I've said, Jo, would you like your matcha latte coffee, whatever you've had for the last 17 years every morning? Because I know you like that. Or today, would you like to go for an orange juice, for example? Well, I've got given the thumbs up, so I know it's that first choice and it's wonderful. Now, hang on a minute. Where have we really begun to explore there? Because something even as small as someone's drink choice. Yes, human beings are creatures of habit. Totally get that. And that's okay to live off that. But when was the last time we really began to explore what that choice means? How do I know that Jo didn't want the third option or the fourth option?
So what you're saying is that we absolutely need to be alongside people to discover how they communicate. That's part of our role, as part of what most of us love as support workers. We have to discover who somebody is, understand how they communicate. We do need to record that in some way, because we need to make sure the rest of the team know that when Jo does, sorry, Jo, it means this. I think what you're saying as well then is, don't assume that stays the case for very long. You need to keep checking. Is that what you're saying? Because actually the thumbs up might have meant, yes, I want that fancy coffee last week, but actually today it doesn't mean that. So you're saying it's about that deep connection and relationship. and exploring and not assuming. And what I think what you're saying as well is that the little supported decision making isn't just for the big things. It's not just, do you want to move home? Do you want to have sex? Do you want to do this? It's actually, what do you want to eat today? What do you want to drink? Where do you want to go? And that decision there, which can be denied people again, can't it?
It is.
If we intentionally seek to understand and record what we know about somebody, but keep checking. Is that right? Is that right?
We absolutely keep going back to historical likes and wants, and that's our default, and that's because that's the way that our culture sets. What I am saying unequivocally is the smaller decisions are the bigger decisions in this conversation. The amount of support for a moving house where everybody gets touchy and wants to produce they've done it, you will get that support there because it is such a big decision. But life doesn't work like that. Our big decisions in life only, let's be honest, the move down to here was one of the biggest things I've happened in probably my life. What's more important for me is what my daily life looks like. What does my daily life?
What strikes me as well, Damian, is that if we are valued as individual human beings and supported to make decisions that matter to us, we start to believe in our right and ability to make those decisions. What we see with so many people who've grown up in service land is they're used to not being discovered. They're used to accepting. And I don't know if you find this, Karen and Joe, but often people say, well, I asked the person I support what they wanted, and they said they like what they got. And that might be they like what they got, but sometimes people haven't had those everyday conversations to really go, do you really like orange juice still? You've had that every day for the last 6 months.
It's about questioning though, as well, isn't it? Because like you say about do you want a coffee or would you like some orange juice? I wouldn't have approached a conversation like that. I would have said, would you like a coffee or would you like something different? Because then when you say, would you like something different? Then you can go through all the range of, well, do you want juice? Do you want, hot chocolate? What, so it's kind of like a breaking it down even more, I guess.
Absolutely.
And knowing how to break it down.
So staff knowing how to break it down, and the people we support starting to understand they are making decisions about their life and they have the ability to and the right to. Yeah. So people will then start aspiring to bigger stuff because they know they're being listened to.
Just that small tip from Karen there can make a massive difference. That was eloquently put and brilliantly put, Karen. The way that we ask our questions, and again, you go to, we use that as a prime default example that we would use in training or when exploring with our teams. I always use that, and then we go off there. Just the fact that you said there, then the different ways of asking that fits into principle 2 about decision making, and where we need to explore it is. You ask me at 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning when I've just walked the dog what I want for tea that night. I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you to do one. I absolutely do. I know you don't talk to me at that time in the morning. I'm terrible. So why is that any different for someone else? We kind of, and an example I'd also like to use where this becomes a real challenge for our support workers is the environments where you have 2, 3, 4 people living together, because it almost becomes a group decision rather than individualized support. And that is a huge challenge within itself. How do we, when supporting people in a group situation, or even what is becoming more of the common now of shared support? Well, shared support's fine as long as we're identifying that we can find what's the word I'm looking for? A theme of both individuals. Let's take 2 individuals, for example, not led by one of the stronger who would have that. For example, Joe and I will be in a room and we'll decide what pub we're going to. But if I'm very excitable in my excitable bunny chants, Joe's going to go crying out loud, shut him up, we'll go there. That's fine. All right. Yeah, there you go. For those people that we know that would struggle with a confidence because they haven't been listened to, that's a reality here as well. And I always sit it under, and I never know what phrase to use, and it feels really uncomfortable, and it should feel uncomfortable about when we phrase people that use behaviours to communicate. Hate all that, but we have to give it a title and whatever it is. But I almost. Every time I come across an incident, what we class as an incident, and we have to write an incident down, where I come across it from the avenue is question is why. One of the most powerful questions we could ask is why. If you think about it, if you are someone that has to communicate through behaviors, etc., it's because you're bloody frustrated because no one's listening to you. No one, everybody's got we're following this and I'm helping you keep at baseline, to all that utter nonsense, when really strip it back to the bare essentials. No one's getting what I'm saying here. No one's getting it. And I tell you what, if I lost the ability to speak tomorrow, which would crucify me because that is literally where I do a lot of my communication, I'll tell you what, I'll be stamping my feet up and down and throwing everything left, right and center if no one's getting what I'm speaking to. So the way we ask questions under supported decision making is not only the way we ask questions, it's about time to ask questions. Have we gone back and re-looked at that? Have I asked at the wrong time? Again, you only need someone to be in a particularly bad mood. I don't think there's either anybody who's going to watch this or certainly on this call that says they haven't been in a bad mood where their decision wasn't particularly, it was a fundamentally, I don't want to do that just because I'm going to be awkward today because I'm in a bad mood. Why are we not considering that within our support and the offer of support we've done? Have we not explored that option? Why is it we have to go to the decision and then that decision sticks? And that's my biggest worry, is the amount of times that I see a decision's been made for the little things in life that are so repetitive within someone's life, right, that label gets stuck with them about the choice they made. Joe there has never had a coffee. She doesn't like coffee. We tried it in 1957, 10 o'clock in the morning, and she told me she didn't like it. And yes, I'm exaggerating, but seriously, go back, have a look at our support planning, go back and have a look at what you've done. When was the last time you readdressed a conversation with someone that said, are these still your choices? I mean, an example I can give you is last night's tea. I'll explore my little world for you. My whole family and I are going very plant-based products and that lot. And I'll tell you, 3 weeks ago, I told you, don't be ridiculous. What's wrong with you all? I had my first plant-based meal last night and it was wonderful and great. Why is it that someone who might have a struggle to communicate or have that choice making, why have we not explored that? Because what we're also not considering here, and one of the biggest challenges around the Mental Capacity Act about exploring decision making is that how many choices can we offer? And I know there will always be a challenge back, and I regularly get a challenge back to go, well, where does it stop? Well, it doesn't stop. It never stops. So your decision making.
I think that's interesting about where does it stop, because the thing we get a lot. We had a webinar with Chris Hatton, Langston University, about choice. And often, a lot of support workers, understandably, have a fear of God put into them around the fact if the person puts on weight whilst they're in there, so the whole thing about controlling what people eat, the whole thing about, for some reason, people living with learning disabilities are not allowed to be in debt or to have a Visa card, where actually a lot of us do get into debt now and again. So it's the whole thing, isn't it? So you're absolutely right. We're measuring something in the wrong way at the wrong times. And the Act clearly says, doesn't it, you should try multiple times. You should have the conversation at different times, different places to look at things, doesn't it, Damian? So that everything you're saying is there.
I think if you're listening to this and you're really wanting to get your heads around and grips around it, strip back the Mental Capacity Act, and I think you get to it. It's fascinating. It's giving you tools to do it. Sally, what you were saying there immediately knocks on to principle 3, the right for people to make unwise decisions. Now, there is less support workers out there and people within social care that are brave enough to support someone with an unwise decision. It is scary land. It is, whoa, hang on, is that really bad? And actually, it is the most brilliant piece of support work you could ever do, because it doesn't fit in with what we want. And it fits in with the individual saying, no, sod you. I don't care if you think it's an unwise decision. This is the decision I want to do. Now, that really starts going into the realms of your evidence and what have I done to support that. That's okay. That's all right. It fits in with the whole decision. It's making you stop, take a breather and really listen. Really listening, because you have to evidence this. Don't treat it as in, I've had that conversation, now I've got to do it together, combine it, spend time. Now, people are under this huge misconception that quality of support. Now I know that before I say this, that there will be elements of support that are very so small that we only have a short time to go in making that difference. But I don't care if it's an hour you're supporting someone a week or whether it's a full 24/7 that someone needs support. Sit down, spending equivalent time as long as you need to, because to begin to explore decision making and those daily decision makings will be the best piece of work you'll ever do. What that will then do is open up a whole world for you of support at the most person-centered way we can do it. We all talk about person-centeredness, we all talk about it. If you're not exploring decision making and how someone's decisions are, you can write off, because it's still our opinion. You can write off person-centeredness. It has to start there.
But you're saying as well, I keep asking, what you're saying is that it's about recording that. So in terms of the law says unwise decisions are there. So not dangerous, but unwise, okay? So if a support worker, it's a real empowerment for support workers to know this is what the law says. Have the conversations, record it. Now, I know you as a manager would welcome that, but we need to influence the cultures of organisations. So if support workers have a sense that they shouldn't be doing that more risky stuff, I suppose part of the role of the movement is just to help people be brave enough to say, this is what I've heard someone wants to do. I've recorded it, kind of have a chat about it. Yeah. And, sometimes say to the manager, well, why are you saying we can't do it? Because I thought, I'm not setting people up against each other, but the law is a powerful tool, isn't it, in terms of the Mental Capacity Act? And knowing that, and I'm not saying that organisations don't want risk. What I hear from support workers in the movement sometimes is, we're not really encouraged to.
And isn't it also about kind of, knowing that you don't have to be on your own thinking about these things, that you can lean on each other, but also the importance of questioning, I think, to keep questioning all the time.
And why? Why? The most powerfulest question you could ever ask. Why? And when we talk about, but yes, isn't it wrong that we have to say that to support an unwise decision is quite a brave thing to do? But that's okay. We accept it. We are not as far along as we want to be. We believe we were, but we're not. We're not. Let's all put our hands up. We're not, because of whatever that is. We're straight. We're not. No one's criticizing anybody. We're working together. So what you've got to do is be really confident, and that's legislation. And I'll tell you something, and I'm going to be really honest here. It will be really interesting to go to any senior manager, any support worker, and even, and I kid you not, even the likes of your social care commissioners, ask the question, can I ask you, do you know the 5 principles of the Mental Capacity Act? It is fascinating. It is fascinating to see the response. Why? I've had to change my mindset. When I first started to ask this question, I thought it's okay. I can use it as a real batterer here because, why don't you know it, etc. Then I had to change a real mindset on it because it was the majority that could not name me the 5 principles. That's your starting point. Work with a team together. Keep reminding yourselves. It doesn't take long to understand those 5 principles. Then as human beings, what we begin to do, our curiosity begins to explore that. What does that mean then? What is that? Because as a statement, every effort should support people to make the decision. Okay, now what does that mean? What does that mean? Go into it. Go and have a look at what's available to you. Talk together as a team. It will be led by the individuals themselves. If you even begin to have a conversation that you support that says, we're going to spend time today exploring what you really want. I don't care who it is. I have had nothing but a reaction that comes up as a positive. Now, there will be a case there that says those that struggle with huge having a matter of choices, etc., put to them and everything. That doesn't stop you. It's about making the importance of the right choices that's put in front of the individual, but still explore it. There's something I always use with my teams, and that's 99-to-1 rule. It's going to take you 99 times or 99 things to explore before you find the one thing. Now, we don't just sit there and go, well, that's all right. We found that one thing. Now that can stick in someone's plan for the rest of their lives. You start the process again. That's referring back to how long does it take? It takes as long as it's need to. It's forever changing. I mean, I remember putting a pair of slip-ons on and a white pair of slip-ons back in the 80s and going to a discotheque. just because I loved it back then. Do I still want to do the same thing? Of course I don't. But we see repeatedly, people doing the same activities, the same routines that they've always had. Now, where that gets a little bit confusing is that you go back to the individual and I say, Joe, do you like horse riding? Yes, I do like horse riding. Joe, do you like water skiing? Don't know. Have you ever tried it? No. Well, where are we beginning to explore new opportunities for people? Now, if you begin to explore new opportunities for people that we support, watch what happens with that. You will soon get a yes or no, or I don't like that. Now, that's a really interesting way to start looking at communication, and the way we support decision making is come out. We talk about it, come outside the box. Offer an opportunity that you don't think this individual has ever had the opportunity to do. Step outside, plan it as a team, get it all ready, help with the individual understand what's going on. Then you'll get a true reaction to what someone's like. Then you can look at, and the detail of information that you record there, oh, that reaction there, that was a definite, whoa, no. And that's what it's got.
That's exactly it. We hear from colleagues all over the country. That's, you just need to do that, understand that total communication, and observe what happens in new experiences. So, and it's how we keep ensuring there are those new experiences and try new things to see those reactions, and that supports us in decision. So Damian, I'm conscious of time, unfortunately. I could talk with you for ages, but can you give us a couple of examples where you seen some really great work around supporting people to make decisions, whether they're, as you described, the beautifully simple ones or more complex ones? A couple of examples where people have shown creativity in how they do that.
I want to give you an example about, and it ties into, lovely enough, the Mental Capacity Act's final sort of principle, and that is support people in the least restrictive practice way. So I want to give you a little example here about how, it connects, all of this connects, we know it does, the empowerment, the choice, the control that someone has in their life. And the example I'm going to give you, I'm not going to give you names, I'm going to call him Bob for a second. So Bob lives in a house with 4 others and shares a kitchen, and has a high potassium level. So I believe that, but I might have got my diagnosis slightly wrong there. But what that meant was that the individual was very restricted to the amount of fluids that person can have. Okay, so it is, health risk, associated risk, key risk management, all there, all the service speakers there. All right. What we forgot in all that is, where we were trying to keep the individual safe, was you can imagine the obsession that the person has, because every time they want a drink, you can 99% of the time it was no, 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 or you can now because it's such and such time and we can measure your drink out. Now, I get it. We had to keep someone safe. Our key principle, how do we keep people safe? That's where the backlog's going to come on. What the brilliance came about for this individual and was a simple £1.75, I believe it was actually £1.72, that was an odd price, egg timer that changed this man's world and choice. So what happened was, no one had really sat down with the individual to explain why this hadn't happened. Now, we're talking, this man is in his late 40s. All right. Now, there was this is beautifully tying in, may I say. I promise you I didn't plan this. All right. It's going back. it's going back to what we started with, and that was assuming capacity. So everybody looked at this individual, and he'd gone through the care system and, and the institutionalization, etc., of everything that was happening. And everybody had assumed that this man would not be able to understand the complexities of his health condition. So everybody, it had been decided, or somewhere along the line got completely missed, that we will sit down with this individual and explain it. What was lovely with this team, now considering the fact I'm a big supporter of the Mental Capacity Act, the teams that I certainly directly managed at that time had no choice but to sort of, I call it showing off. And there's nothing wrong with showing off in social care. Show off. If you're helping someone to make better control of their lives and better decisions, show off, tell the world about it, share. So my teams were very big on this. And what I saw was, over a period of about a week, was one individual really taking the time to find that communication style, the descriptions that was used to understand this individual's health need and health condition. They really began to explore that. Then what we did, we switched it. It didn't stop. then we thought, well, how do we get the control back for the individual? So this individual's asking for a drink. Hang on a minute. The other question is there, just to let you know, at no point did anybody forget that, let's start with the first principle, prove that this man doesn't have capacity. Prove it. No, you didn't know, did you? Because you were just told. Anyway, let's revert back. What happened was, rather than the question no and no and no all the time, what was given to this man was a simplistic egg timer. And what he did, he'd take control back completely of his life. He had his measured out drink so that he had enough and abundance within his fridge and freezer, that it was his shelf and his that. And where he took control back in his life and his decision making was his egg timer was flipped over every time. Now, once that timer had run out and he'd been supported to understand that, at any point there, he had every choice to go and have his drink that he wanted. And from that. So again,
brilliant.
That was just a beautiful piece where everything, and I am not exaggerating now, that went from years and years of, can I have a drink? Can I have a drink? No, to gone.
Such a great example, because it does take us back to assumption of lack of capacity, desire to protect. Let's do a best interest. Hopefully a pride for deprivation of liberty as well, because sometimes people might even start locking the kitchen so people won't get to taps and stuff, and that's a legal thing as well. To saying, actually, spend time with this man, trying to help him understand, and you found a way which prevented all that legal stuff later on.
The example I'm giving was within that house itself, and it was a residential setting, only for 4 people. For 4 people, there was 144 restrictions when we walked in.
I remember this when I met you. And
yeah.
How many restrictions were removed?
Well, we got down to 32, and those 32 were justified and for safety of the individuals. And actually, we worked with the individuals. But I hope to this day, actually, I have to tell you that the place no longer exists, which is always a joyful thought. But the journey never stopped. And what happened was with the team was that momentum of, wow. And it started with, I refused to carry a set of keys. I refused to. I wanted to live the life the individuals did. And that's where the team began to, but the excitement that created within a team.
And I think that's the whole thing for me, is support workers are amazing people wanting to do brilliant jobs. You just need to have the discussions and the resources there to help them be the best they can be. Because no one wants to deprive people of liberties. But if you come in as a support worker to an organisation and you get the feeling that's what happens, you do it because you think that's what it is. So, and that was the aim of getting you here today, to really just say, actually, it is a legal thing, but actually it's really simple. Believe in people's ability to make decisions. Absolutely explore in any way you can help them make those everyday and big life decisions. If they need some support, there is a way through best interest of involving them and helping do that. But the fundamental thing is believe in capacity and do all you can to explore.
The main thing I'm advising you is take your time.
Well, that's a good link to your tips, Damian. So I'm going to move on to the tips. So in the time we've got left, just chat us through the tips that you've got here, Damian.
It's always my big one. We say we have no time. We say we don't have this. Make the time, create the time, stand there and be really confident and bold and feel comfortable that whatever that looks like for that individual, that you are just going to sit and explore someone's style, communication. We say we do it. When was the last time we really sat down with someone and said, patience, go back to something, don't jump forward, it's okay. Listen, nothing's changing at the moment, so actually every step that you make, no matter how little that is, no matter what that build-up of time is, just start it. Just start
at that time, Damian. We hear from a lot of support workers, quite rightly, they're really limited in time because they get less time now than they ever did before. But when you're taking your time, but you could be doing the washing up or going to Tesco's or Sainsbury's. You could be. It's about being present and having that conversation. Doesn't mean you're having time to sit with someone, although that's great if you can. But if, like Karen, you're an outreach worker and you're there for a couple of hours, you can be doing other stuff, but showing that intentional listening. And
yes, but also committing to that as well. It's okay to commit with that. I got to give this one example, and I get really excited about it. And it was a time I was proven so wrong. It was quite embarrassing, but I don't care. I'll share the story. I was sat in an office in a residential home. Oh, already makes you feel a little bit nervy there, sat in an office. Anyway, I could see directly to the right of me, the team had decided with the individuals of the house that they wanted this place to go and pamper themselves and have some time spending doing it. Anyway, to jump forward, I was in the middle of an interviewing a wonderful member of staff, still remember the staff now, and I can tell you a story about them that just blew my mind. Anyway, I was watching, and the ladies of the house, and I call them the ladies because they were the complete bosses of the house, were having their hair done. And what I noticed after a little while out the corner of my eye was my staff team there as well. And I call it my staff team. That's a terrible word, but the support team having their hair straightened. And I was in the middle and I couldn't help it, corner of my eye. And I kept looking across, and I had to say in this interview, sorry, I've got to go. And I stood up all authoritative, and I thought I was, going in to just correct people about. So I walked into it and I looked at the team and I went, and I did my usual standard sarcastic approach to everything. I'm sorry, am I bothering your day? Did you have not time to get ready this morning? I didn't realize that, I'd missed having your hair done appointment. Now, just beautifully, a support worker looked at me because she knew me very well and went, got a minute? And I went, yes, of course, as I did with my attitude. She gently walked me outside and went, Damo, here's the thing. What you haven't realized here is that the ladies have never experienced something like this. They've always had their hair done within that closed environment. Now, all of a sudden, they're sharing it. They're exploring this for one of their first times. So what we found is if we join in with it and make it something that's a normal activity or something we do together as ladies, you watch the ladies' interaction and how much more comfortable they feel watching us having our hair straightened and then taking their turn to go, oh, I want some of this and that. And I went, okay, carry on as you were then. Good support. Well done. Excellent. There you go. And I went back to
absolutely.
That is the beautiful story of the importance of the quality of the relationship that you have with the person that you're supporting and how much you value them, because then the person might feel more comfortable with how they answer with more honesty when they're making decisions. Maybe they've been around people who they feel that they have to kind of answer in a certain way or whatever. So actually, that relationship is so important, I think, in people kind of really accessing and kind of, being who they are, exploring.
Absolutely. Damian, tip 2.
Getting a grip and understanding mental capacity. I cannot advocate this enough. I genuinely don't. Now, what my biggest tip is for you and what I did on this, now I don't know about the rest of you. I've actually read the CARE Act, which was a joyful read, and everything. Now, what I needed to do with any legislation or anything is certainly what worked for me with the Mental Capacity Act. When you are reading it and looking out on it, start at the beginnings. Start at the very beginnings. Just Google 5 principles of the Mental Capacity Act. Google it and look at about 5-6 different sites. They're all the same. All right, the principles don't change. All right, sometimes the wording changes a little bit, but go and explore that. Now, when you start going to the in-depthness looked at the MCA, what my advice to you is this. Relate it to what happens with you. How does that reflect on you? Stop looking bigger picture. Visualize the individual that you support and the person that you need to help with that. Question that from that point of view. Now what you'll do is you'll begin to get curious. The Mental Capacity Act is beautifully written. I love the Mental Capacity Act. But what it is, you may want to query that and go, well, actually, what will happen is when you start to query it is that you get proper, decent challenges and conversations. So what I'm noticing more, certainly for the large teams that I manage, it's more people that are coming in from outside social care now that are beginning to challenge this, that are really giving us a bit of what I would call a run for our money. Love that. All right. I thought we were supposed to assume capacity. You're right. But we're not doing that here, are we? No, we're not. What are you going to do about it to change it? How do we do that? Now, what happens is the team behind that, oh, hang on, this is what we do. No. Go back and read the Mental Capacity Act. Upskill yourself. Do it. Understand it. Fit within that. legislation work for the individual. All right, let it work for them. That's what it was designed for. Get to know it, read it. 20 minutes, half an hour of your time as a social care professional, because that's what everybody is. You're professionals. All right. Read it, spend the time. It will give you a confidence, a huge confidence.
And that's where I can also say that the book that we've got online, which is a free one that goes through supported decision making in the Act, we're just about to start a project to refresh it. So we'll be in touch with everybody about that soon, because it absolutely, Reid, I totally agree. And then there's something here that makes it easy to discuss through with people you support and their families and your colleagues as well. So really good. Tip 3, Damian. We're getting tight for time, Damian.
Okay, communication is essential. Explore it all. We've got, I think, hopefully I've repeated myself about 6,000 times about this. All right. Whatever you need to do it. Don't mess about with it. Sorry. It isn't even just a tip, it's a do. It's a do. Go and do it. Explore. Have a look. Get help. Get specialists into help. Never stop learning someone's communication. Never stop. And detail that to the point within its life of reporting, so that the gift you can give anybody we support is information to others that supports them in the same consistent way without losing the personalities and relationships they've got. But if I want to be communicated to, I want it done in the detail that I want it done. All right. Be curious, get to know an individual. Oh, yes. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Why? You know, it is, I still sit to this day as calling it one of the most privileged jobs we could ever do. And I don't even know why we call it a job. It's a lifestyle. Let's be honest, you can't class it as a job, because a job is a 9 to 5 and you get to finish. Unfortunately, everybody here in this room, we don't finish. We've made that we've made that decision. We've bought the ticket and jump on the bus. It's too late. You ain't getting out, and we all know it. All right.
Look after yourselves as well and give yourselves breaks, Damian.
Like that.
Listen, it's a breed. We're a breed of people. Let's be honest. You'll never see it in any other industry. And trust me, I've gone through 23 different industries, and this one, I have never seen anybody. But be curious. Why wouldn't you get to know someone and just what a privilege to be involved in someone's life. So take advantage of that and explore it with them. Review, check, continue, look at decisions made. Yeah. So I want to be just a bit clear about this when I say review and check. Most of us in service land, we do our yearly reviews, or every 16 years we might get a review from a social worker if we're lucky. All right. And that's not a criticism of social worker. That's the pressures we're under. I want to just flip that back a little bit and talk about, from a manager's perspective and from a team's perspective, is about review and check. When we talk about not the big decision making, the daily decision making, the real important stuff that sets someone's day up, there's nothing wrong with bringing that into a group discussion and regularly reviewing that. And I'm not just talking a 6 months or a yearly review. I'm not even talking monthly. What decision did that individual make? What impact did that have for them? Almost reflective practice. What can we learn from that? What can we do that needs to be changed? Because I guarantee you, if you keep exploring decision-making and supported decision-making, you are about to go down a rabbit hole of the most best excitement and support work you could ever do. And I'm talking from experience, that your world goes mind-blowing, but it's fantastic. It never stops. For me, if you're a manager and watching this, start the conversation with your teams. Watch it explode. Watch it with yourself explode. Review, check. It's a good element of what we do. Should we have a check-in measure? Should we have a little review? Now that's service speak, but what more of a right does someone have than our understanding of their choice to go back and check we got that right? That's a given right for the people we support, and their human right to make sure that their choices are the ones that are made by them and not influenced by us.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of support workers, I'm right, I think would make a plea saying to create that time to have that conversation. So how can we make sure that supervisions and team meetings and just that downtime that people have does really do this, not just like, can you do another task? Can you do another system thing? But actually making space for these conversations, because we absolutely know support workers want to and will absolutely want to look down that rabbit hole and actually get involved in this. But they need to be given permission, and they need to be shown that this is what really matters.
So there's a couple of little cheeky little tips here. We got some little, we got some ways around this. Okay, we got that. So
you haven't got much time.
Okay, so coming from a senior manager's perspective, I absolutely understand that. I'm going in perspective, but what I always advise my teams and is to do this is be really clear why you're doing it. All right. Now, if you want a clear reason for doing that, let's go straight to what we would call in service speak of outcome-based support, right? Start with your first outcome being, I am going to support someone to understand their decisions in their life. Boom, there you go. You want it from a compliance perspective and a perspective of justifying it. Okay, it's quite an outcome for this individual is to explore their choice making. Then you can go down that avenue quite effectively. Then what you're going to do is you imagine having a conversation with, if it's a hierarchy line manager base where you're responsible and you have to answer into every 2 minutes of your time, be really clear that you're going to do that, just to let you know I'm going to do that. All right, this is what I'm going to do and what that looks like. Sally, I think you hit the nail on the head. It doesn't have to be set in stone. It can be do while we're doing the washing up. It can be do while we're looking at our phone. Whoa, what do you think about that? It should be continual and moving on. It's just the time to record it. Make the time. Agree that within you as a team. Agree that within an organization of how you're going to explore this. Because you get this right, and we carry on talking about it, and we carry on facing the challenges together. Look at the difference that's going to make.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Go on, I'm going to have to shut them up, everybody. You know, if you're listening to this or watching this and Karen, like, David, you are, honestly, I love the passion, energy and inspiration. Thank you so much. I mean, there's so much more. We'll revisit this as part of our work of thinking about resources that will help. I'm thinking, Joe, we could just develop a very simple Gr8 Support Movement poster with the 5 principles and just get it out there. Just, you know, just to sort of maybe to spike some curiosity about what they are. So I'm going to say a massive thank you to Damian. And what another slide? Oh yeah, we found this yesterday. We were preparing for this, and I just like this. Always be curious, and at times be furious. Yeah. I just think what we hear from Damian is that total. You're not going to accept injustice. You know, everybody's human. Everybody has human rights. The law says it's what should be. So let's always be curious, and at times we need to be furious. And certainly I know that anger and frustration and fury drives me sometimes. It doesn't have to be negative energy, as long as we look after ourselves, but it's how we make sure the voice of support workers, if you are feeling angry about things, how you get listened to. But this being furious keeps us seeing the reality of the injustice sometimes, doesn't it? Damian's going to say something again. I
have to say, the main thing is that we bring it up as a conversation. That's our starting point. Just start talking about it. We ain't going to change things overnight, but I'll tell you what, let's begin the conversation. I'll tell you what, fundamentally, you want a good place to start. Someone's choices and their understanding of that choices. You don't go far wrong. I can link it to every single piece of legislation that's ever written, without question.
Absolutely, absolutely.